Good afternoon, everyone. And as rightly mentioned, we are here to discuss with the eminent panel, of course, to understand how AI and innovation is impacting. So I'll directly start off with a few questions, and of course, then would love to understand from you on your take as well. Chirag, over to you. Uh, could you share your insights on how organizations can prepare their workforce for AI integration and ensure that they have the required skills and knowledge?
Yeah, thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm glad we are starting with this question. Is it working? Am I audible?
Yes. Yeah, you're okay now.
Okay. I'm audible? I'm getting a signal. All right, thank you. Okay, actually, I'm glad that we are starting with this question. I'll be answering this context more by talking about a little bit on the generative AI because that is the key focus these days, right? I see that there are three different aspects to it. First is basically the business stakeholders, right? These are the key guys who ensure that there is a key enablement of how we are going to ensure that change is going to be enabled in the system, right? For example, if the technology advancements are happening, right, we have an agile approach to do a course correction in middle, right? We have the right system of research and delivery, right? Ensuring that we have right focused skill competency development plan in the system, right? So that when the employees reaches out to them, they ensure that the right skill set is available to deliver the complex challenges, right? The second aspect is around the development teams, right? Let's talk about the personas of ML engineers, data scientists, right? UI UX experts, like full stack architects. Do we have the right training systems for all the personas we have, right? Talking about, let's say, prompt engineering, right, which is again a key focus area these days. Talking about tiny language models, or let's say we make it a little broader, responsible AI, security concerns. Do we have the right training mechanism to ensure that the team are enabled or workforce are enabled, right? Finally, about the users, which is the third aspect, right? Now, for example, I'm asking a question to a Google, right? I'm doing a search, or let's say somebody else asking the same query on a search, right? There's a good chance that your responses may come out better, right? Because the way you interacted with the system is optimum than the way I interacted, right? So we need to ensure all the three aspects, business stakeholders, the development teams, the users are equipped to ensure that we are able to deliver value by building solutions.
Yeah. Thanks a ton, Chirag. This definitely helps. Thank you for sharing your insights. So in what way can AI enhance creativity and innovation within the workforce? And what strategy should leaders employ to foster a culture of continuous learning and adaptation? So yes, Jay, over to you.
Yep. Thank you, Akanksha. That's actually a very, very interesting question. The reason being that every leader within the organization is actually looking at like how can actually they can bring in the entire organization to innovate. Because innovation should not be like siloed to some lab or some practice within the organization. How can you bring in like everybody to come and then understand this AI and how actually we can use that for the betterment of themselves as well as for the betterment of the organization and the stakeholders as well. But having said that, I mean, you just cannot say, hey, you are an employee, now start innovating, right? You should actually provide the platform, the kind of framework which is actually required for them to innovate. For example, if you take the centralized, the hub and spoke kind of innovation, the hub is actually used to kind of doing this kind of innovations on a continuous basis. They know how to do it. When new technology emerges, they keep doing a lot of POCs. They kind of do pilots. They kind of scale up. So they are used to that. But the rest of the organization, if you just tell them, hey, start innovating, you're not giving them an approach or a framework to basically do the innovation. So that is where actually what I propose is like when it comes to AI and Gen AI, which is like the future, we need to kind of give some kind of a framework for them to kind of start innovating. So with that perspective, for everyone within the organization, for example, one of them they can actually do is like what they can actually discover new. Okay, for example, you are already getting a lot of business intelligence dashboards, reports, predictive insights, and all those stuff. But what is new? For example, in the morning also we saw some sessions where people are actually talking about like how can you actually converse with the data, right? So far the capability was not there. Some companies were there who were doing it, but now it is like much more democratized. anybody can ask a question and anybody can actually get that insights from the data readily, okay? So the key thing is like, how can I actually bring in new discoveries from what you're actually getting, right? Through conversations, can you ask the question, not the what, but in terms of the why it happened? What is the causal reason behind that? Those things actually you can ask for and get insights. So the first is like new discoveries you can look for. Number two, actually what you can look for is like in terms of these co-pilots we are actually talking about. Today, like everyone is actually looking at like what co-pilot we can bring in. For example, Microsoft, they are talking about like how they will bring in co-pilot. You can create PPT, Word, everything at the, instance of like just a few seconds, right? But at the same time, like as software developers, as data scientists, we also have like kind of the way how to incorporate Copilot in the form of, let's say, pair programming, right? You can actually write in natural language, and that becomes the new programming language now, right? You can put that natural language and get a code and see if it is working, not working. You can ask it to write test cases for you. So all those things are actually art of the possible today. So Copilot is another interesting stuff. The third one is like in terms of how do you kind of look at augmenting your capability, right? For example, let's say, we hire a lot of people, right? As a hiring manager, you have, let's say, a job description, and you have like resumes coming from the people. How do you kind of map it? And let's say you are in an interview, right? Live interview. And while it is happening, like a bot can be kind of listening to this conversation, and based on the job description and the resume, it can suggest questions. So basically, like you're augmenting the capability of the hiring manager, right? So that's the third thing. The fourth is like a full-fledged automation, right? The previous example I gave, like how can you actually look at like completely automating the hiring process itself, where at the end of the interview session, let's say it gives you a score and says like, hey, this candidate is good, this is not good, that kind of stuff, right? So that is the fourth dimension. The fifth dimension is like when it doesn't exist today, once AGI comes into play, then we look at like completely machines take all control, and then we humans will sit back and relax. So that's not there, but that's the future. So if you are able to kind of define this kind of a structure for people to kind of see like, hey, what can I discover new? And then within your process, like kind of jot down that, right? What can I do co-pilot with? Can I use like, let's say, creation of PPT or new dashboards or new insights? Jot down that. That's an innovation. What can you actually augment for your work, right? So if you give this little bit prescriptive, so then it becomes like everybody in the organization can just pick up some of these things and start innovating in their way. So that's what I would say.
Fantastic, Jay. So the important key takeaway that I have here is talk to data so that you get the right answers. So yes, Vinodh, since you hail from retail, would you share your insights about the same? Probably give some industry examples.
Yeah, I can probably talk about a couple of examples. Tons of innovations, specifically targeting productivity and customer experience in retail. But two standout examples for me. One is customer care. I think this is like a first touch point with a customer. They're interacting with you as a business. So, and they get measured in terms of NPS, right? So very crucial metric for any retailer from a customer service standpoint. AI has actually augmented customer service, right? So I'm not talking about bots that we interact with. I'm talking about contact center agents that are able to do their jobs better because they have real-time AI tools and systems which are helping them tailor the right response to the customer, right? So it's real-time. They're able to do their job better. They're way more productive. And of course, their CSAT scores are going up significantly, right? So this is an example that's close to my heart. The other one that I can talk about is a lot of retail operations has been completely automated by AI, right? So one example is copywriting. If you shop on, let's say, Myntra, you have a product description, right? You're trying to buy an Adidas shoe. There is a product description which is very catchy. It's not talking about the size and the color and all that, but it's about how trendy it looks and how it will pair with a nice pair of jeans or something like that, right? So that is called a product copywriting, and that process in a lot of retailers has been completely automated, right? I'm not talking about ChatGPT, but large language models in general have enabled that process to be completely automated. I'm not saying it's you don't need copywriters anymore. All I'm saying is it has made their life significantly easier. They spend far less time and they're able to get to the first draft in no time, right? So these are two examples from retail that I can talk about AI, driving productivity and innovation.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that, Vinodh. Definitely it helps us. So VG, turning to you, since you come from industry and academia, what are the key ethical considerations and responsibilities that leaders should prioritize when implementing AI in their organization to ensure fairness, transparency, and accountability?
See, AI has changed the way we look at the world. So let me go into the whole society was built around laws. The laws were framed and societies were born. Now in the last 20 years, what change which is happening is laws are framed after you commit a crime. So what I mean by that is that what is ethical is not defined till something happens. And that is not the way the human structure was built around. And that is changing dramatically in the way people think. One of the other things was that human is a social animal. Now I am saying human is a social media animal. So the challenge which is happening here is that there is a dramatic shift in terms of how you frame laws. This is the first time in the history that human behavior is controlled, or maybe, I'll not say controlled in every way at this moment, could be controlled, and maybe at least it is being fed through things like AI, and then you say, who is responsible if you commit a crime? From a crime part. So one is the part where the societal angle is happening. Second is, what is ethical? Now, ethic is what 50 people in a room say is ethical. Everybody will have a different view to it. And in that world, it is becoming really very difficult to say that you have to now be ahead of the curve. So from that perspective, there is a major change which is happening in terms of the ethics side of AI, that we are defining things, and as we were talking yesterday, that I think the laws are at least 2 to 3 years behind than what is actually happening. At least 2 to 3 years. I think that is a scary thing, but it's also an opportunity that it allows us to think ourselves that can AI be used to self-police ourselves and understand, instead of somebody telling us what is right and wrong. It's on us to understand what is wrong and right.
Fantastic. VG, thank you so much for your insights there again. Turning to you, Jay, what role can governments and policymakers play in regulating AI adoption and promoting responsible AI used to protect workers' rights and privacy?
Yep. Yeah, I think when we talk about AI, I think responsible AI kind of comes along with that, or we need to kind of merge both of these things together. If you look at the governments, probably the first draft is probably from the European Union. They came with that 3-4 years back. And that was pretty interesting draft. The reason being that Europe always has been kind of a pioneer when it comes to the data security, privacy and other stuff. They had very, very strong laws when it comes to data security, privacy, with the GDPR and other kind of laws. And then post that, they followed up with this AI draft as well. So along with you, now you can see other countries like India has come with its own draft, China has its, US has its, Australia has its. So pretty much most countries have actually come up with some kind of draft in terms of how to handle this whole revolution of AI, right? So when we look at from a company point of view, from an organization point of view, though there is nothing enforceable at this point in time, the onus is on each of us as practitioners, as well as the leadership of the company should look at what are those best practices actually we can pick up from each of these drafts, and then create our own guidelines when it comes to how we can actually use AI, be it for your internal organization, or be it actually you are kind of delivering some services to your clients. Because at the end of the day, there is a consumer who is going to be impacted in a positive or a negative way by using AI, right? So when it comes to this whole responsible AI stuff, there are a couple of things we all of us know in terms of ensuring the security, the safety, the privacy, the fairness, the bias, and all those kind of stuff, combined with explainability and then accountability and all those stuff, right? So now the key thing is like, when we are actually looking at like these independently, we won't be knowing like how to connect these dimensions of responsible AI into like what actually we are going to do in real life, right? That's a big disconnect. There is a law, but always law is there. We don't know how to enforce it. That's a big challenge. Take AI or anything else. That's the reality of life, right? So when we actually look at applying these practices, we look at like from a AI project development cycle, how actually we can incorporate in each of the phases. So when you see like, let's say you have the entire life cycle starting with business understanding, the data understanding, data preparation, model build, and all those life cycle phases are there. So you need to see like right in the first phase, like for example, in the EU draft, people say that you need to determine how risky is this particular use case, okay? Is it like critical risk, is it high risk, is it medium risk, or is it low risk? So based on your use case and the subject or the consumer who is going to be the user of this particular application, you need to evaluate that risk of that particular use case, and then everything else is actually driven based on that, the risk category it actually belongs to. For example, some of the things like you can't actually use for actually manipulating people, okay, or manipulating children, the vulnerable, others. So those things actually fall under the category of critical risk. So that is a big no. You just cannot do it. You cannot apply AI. Then comes the next category, like wherein you talk about high risk kind of things, wherein people talk about like, is the fundamental right of a citizen is going to be affected from a, let's say, freedom of speech or availability of resources and services which they can avail from. It can be a company or a government, it doesn't matter, but will they be in any way affected by AI? If you are using an AI application and it is going to determine, like, okay, I hire this guy, I won't hire this guy, and you're not able to provide any kind of explanation around that, then you have a problem, okay? So those things actually come under high risk category. The rest of them can be like some kind of a medium category where there is a bot interacting with the customer and all those kind of stuff. But there actually, you need to identify that saying that, hey, we give some nice names, I am Neha, I am Bob and all those stuff, but say that, hey, you're a bot, not a human being, right? So you need to be like explicitly saying that. You may have a human name, but explicitly outline that you are interacting with a bot. Make that very, very transparent. That's actually very important. Then the last category is low risk. It's up to you to ensure that you're actually following the guideline. So starting with like identification of the risk, then you need to look at like each phase, data understanding, you need to look at like, are you ensuring like, is there any PA information in the data? So is there any, you can identify the people based on some phone number, name, so exclude those kind of data. When it comes to like identification or selection of the model, look for models which are actually explainable, right? And then the other important categories like what many of us in the data science world ignore is like testing, okay? So evaluation of that particular application and the model, both are actually very important to ensure that there is no risk actually which gets passed on to the outside world. That is very important. And then once actually you go and implement, then you need to go your post-implementation monitoring, and if there are any issues or things raised, you need to kind of log that. So pretty much like you need to run it like a very, very a strong foundation and governance is required, and that is actually fundamental to it. So from a government point of view, they can be prescriptive, they can define high-level framework from a law point of view, but it is up to us to kind of ensure that how we pick up that, how do we apply that in our actually project life cycle and implement that. Otherwise, it will be laws lying there and project lying on the other side and never trying to getting integrated.
Fantastic, Jay. So we have heard the perspective in terms of how industry is treating it, at the same time how government and policymakers are treating it. So my next question is more in terms of diverse workplace and inclusivity. So Chirag, we would love to hear your thoughts on how AI can help create more inclusive and diverse workplaces, as well as potential pitfalls leaders should be aware of.
Sure. See, I believe, as they always say, right, that change is the only constant, right? So what we also want to ensure is that the team is not getting typecasted, right? As an individual, why this fear come to me? I will feel that, okay, I am getting outdated. I'm not upskilling myself, right? I'm doing the same thing again and again, right? So what is happening is that the person is getting typecasted. what consciously we need to ensure the ecosystem where the person does not get typecasted, right? They need to ensure that they are upskilling themselves, right? Now, how are we going to handle that kind of thing? Again, as I mentioned, picking up from my last right response, that we need to have a very focused skill competency development plan, right? What, as an individual, I should know that, okay, I am on 1st of January, right? I didn't know this thing. At the end of the quarter, I know this. At the end of 6 months, I need this. I actually want to know that I am ready to handle complex challenges tomorrow by upskilling myself, right? This is one thing. Now, how are we going to enable that? Ensuring that we have the business alignment there, right? They are ready to embrace that kind of change, right? They are able to do a course correction in the middle of technology evolvement, how things are happening. The team, the AI COE, right, they are able to identify right technologies and training mechanism or whatever is needed as per the things are changing. And finally, the amalgam of our learning and development teams, right? They need to ensure and right, while working in collaboration with the business as well as AI COE, that there is a right channels to, you can say, enable the employees to learn from them. Maybe you can say some sort of certifications, maybe internal hackathons, internal and external conferences, right? Mechanism to ensure that they can file patents or papers to ensure that the motivation is going on, right? They know that whatever they are doing is value addition, right, to academia and industry. If we have the right ecosystem ensuring a balance between the three aspects, I think we will be able to manage the job security concerns or let's say ensure that the employees are motivated.
Thank you, Chirag, for that. And of course, a key takeaway here is regularly upskilling yourself,
Yes.
be it with an organization or yourself.
Yes.
It's always better to get
Yes.
upskilled. So yes, VG, since you are coming from academia, how do you treat this?
Oh, so I don't call myself an academic, so I can say that. But what I'll say is that what is changing is everybody assumes you will use ChatGPT to solve an answer. That's an assumption people now take. So the question to ask is how do you make sure people are learning and how you make sure that people are actually doing what they need to do. So in the academic side, one change which is happening is that a professor assumes that you are coming to the class and everybody has used ChatGPT or whatever tools they use to the max and the assignments are submitted. Now you will not be marked for that. The marking will be based on come into the class, critique on what you have done and how do you improve it. And I think that changes the game in terms of that at least if you can critique, it doesn't matter what was the baseline changes and now the numbers are given or the marks are given for the next level. That's one way to look at it. Second is no written assignments. Now the new way of assignments are that okay, all assignments will be verbal and you have to speak on a video and send me video clips. Now if you actually are able to speak on a topic, I think you have learned it. Because you are not going to read it, so you can speak on a topic, at least you have learned it. So there are multiple ways organizations can think around how you are assessing people because teaching and learning only happens when assessment happens. I think that's the key takeaway from that perspective. From the leadership side, I think at the corporate level, the change is towards can we create a model where you say, this was your job role earlier, and this job role will become this job role in the AI world. And this is the missing link in terms of the skills. Please do it, and you get that job, instead of trying to say, this will be replaced by that. Why don't you add?
Yes, Vinodh.
Yeah.
Over to you. What do you think how industry is actually treating this diverse and inclusive workplace when it comes to retail?
Well, I think it's a question of, I always believe it's a question of cultural shift that needs to happen in organizations when it comes to AI implementation. By culture, what I mean is ensuring that jobs are not getting displaced. I mean that fear, you really need to ensure that people are aware that their jobs are safe, that their roles are probably morphing into something else. You're also kind of communicating a clear vision as to why these AI systems are getting implemented, rally them behind a larger vision. It's applicable for every industry, not just retail. Mm-hmm. But how are you able to create a very inclusive environment where every associate or an employee is contributing to the larger AI-driven transformation of the company. That's how I view, the inclusivity part when it comes to AI adoption. So it's all about that transparency, like, communicating a clear vision, rallying everyone behind that common cause, and being able to articulate why we are doing what we are doing. I think that's critical.
Fantastic, bang on there. So Chirag, next question again coming into you. Sorry, it's coming into you, of course, Vinodh. How do you recommend leaders stay ahead of evolving AI technologies, adapt effectively and drive innovation in their organizations while keeping a human-centric approach to work? And if you can quickly give an example to it, since we are almost on time.
Sure. So
Yeah.
I don't think you can start innovating today just because AI is a big thing. I think it is, I'm a very strong proponent of culture. So I think if innovation is part of your organizational culture, I think you're naturally going to keep innovating, right? So I don't see any shift, a paradigm shift, just because you have to keep up with the market. So as a leader, I think, it's applicable for all of us. Being abreast of the latest trends. I think Gen AI is the hottest topic, but then I feel it's getting overused and used in places that it shouldn't. But being aware of all the latest technologies, but at the same time, creating a forum I think Jay had mentioned, an opportunity for people to try out their ideas, right? More like a sandbox or some environment where people's ideas come together and you're able to kind of experiment. I think creating that environment is very critical as a leader. What AI has enabled is it has accelerated innovation. You have tools and technologies today where, you can literally come up with a prototype in less than a week. So how do you encourage trying and failing, and how do you create that environment where people have the opportunity to create prototypes, demonstrate, and of course, you as a leader should enable sponsorship from the top so that ideas kind of become reality. It cannot be just academic exercise. You just don't, create ideas, log them in your product backlog, and that's it, don't even get to it. You really need the right sponsorship to be able to take it to reality. That's how I would do it.
Fantastic, Vinodh. Thanks for that perspective. In the interest of time, quickly, how do you think, Jay, what will be your perspective on this question?
Yeah, I think the success of AI in any organization is going to be all around what is alignment, okay? That is actually most important. We can say again, hey, use AI and then force people to do it, but it's not going to work out, okay? So that's the reality. So there are like a couple of things actually look at. One is like the business alignment, okay? How AI is actually going to make some changes to your existing business model. And number two is like what new business model actually you can innovate with AI, okay? So that's one from a business point of view. Number two, you need to look at like your technology alignment. It's not like you just create a business vision and leave it there. You need to see like what is your current stack, what is your legacy stack, what is your new stack, and how can you actually bring in this new stack of AI into that, including Gen AI, right? And make that like your prescribed technical stack. Because the problem now with AI is like, especially Gen AI is like, 40 plus models are there from closed companies, open companies and everything. You really need to figure out like what is that you want to go with, right? That's the other one. The third is like the process alignment, right? You have to have a deep dive into your existing business process and then see like within every role and each process they are actually executing, where AI will actually intervene, where actually it can make a difference, right? The fourth is cultural stuff, which Vinodh already spoke about. That's actually very, very important. Ensuring that making the employees and the stakeholders comfortable with AI, this is something which is going to help you than harm you. Like that's actually fundamental. And people start actually believing in it and then start assimilating into their life, right? The fifth dimension would be like the regulatory alignment, okay, which is what I spoke about earlier. The different laws will come and then what is that you actually got from a compliance point of view. And making sure that if you are actually aligned on these 5 dimensions, I think you have something which is like workable, and then actually you can get started on that.
Fantastic, Jay. So, Chirag, over to you. What is your perspective, since you also hail from one of the industries, and How do you think your industry treats this?
See, the way I believe is that we have to have a very clear understanding of what kind of use case we are talking about, right? Some of the use case, let's say if we talk about healthcare, or let's say we're talking about, let's say where we are dealing with numbers, let's say financial numbers, right? We need to ensure that the right stakeholders are aware of the high precision requirement of that thing, right? Where we need to have right augmentation of human in the loop in the system, right? So that at least we know that whatever the output is generating is actually getting downstream fed into in a proper way, right? It is not something which we are taking a risk. We need to have a right mechanism to identify that, right? We always say that how we start with a problem, right? We don't directly jump into technology, right? What we always say that let's start with a business problem, right? Understand what is the implications of it, then convert into a mathematics problem, right? And then finally bring in the technology part to it, right? So that we know that what exactly the risk attached to it, how we are going to handle that kind of things, right? How we are going to cross leverage being in a tech agnostic or a domain agnostic environment, right? I need that kind of confidence in the system to ensure that we are able to solve the challenges more effectively by adding to the business value.
Fantastic. Thanks a ton, Chirag. Do we have time for a question?
I don't think so.
No, we do not, unfortunately.
Okay, sure. No issues. Thank you. It was really an engaging panel. And in case you guys have any questions, we are all here around. You can always approach us, ask your questions, and we would be happy to answer that. Thank you again.
Thank you.